Welcome back. All right, so I wanted to talk about this because I think this is bigger news than what it's probably going to be reported as. Terrifier 3 being the number one movie this weekend in the theaters, absolutely insane. Now, the shirt I'm wearing is my Evil Dead jersey. Why would I wear this? Because this was banned from the theaters in 1983, and it was nowhere near as graphic and gory as Terrifier movies. So I did a video a couple years ago on Terrifier and on their Art the Clown, easy for me to say, and how I felt like if they're really going to go mainstream with them, they're probably going to have to tame the violence a bit. They're probably going to have to appeal to a more wide stream or mainstream audience and more of a widespread group. And it sounds like studios wanted that, so studios would not come in on Terrifier 3 unless some changes were made. And in defense of Damien Leone, he doesn't have to alter his movie and his vision. Is it grim and graphic? Absolutely. This is a movie that, and I've read the spoilers because I don't care. It's a horror movie. It's not Citizen Kane. It's never gonna be this big grand. Oh, I'm so surprised that person's dead. It's just not a thing. Horror movies are simple. You get your main character, you get your villain, and you know that everybody else in between is either gonna run away or just disappear and not be seen again, or they're gonna end up dead. So that's how horror movies work. And Terrifier 1 was okay, but I did seek that one out because I was hearing so much about how how well how well made is probably not the way to look at it, but there was a vision there and it was something different. And so while the original Terrifier didn't even bother with a plot, and I mean, there was the one final girl that they killed off, and I didn't think they should have. And when I look at Sienna, the main character in these movies now, I'm thinking, if they hadn't killed off the other final girl in the first movie, we could have had three movies with this young lady fighting Art the Clown. But that's me. They did fix that in the second movie because one thing that horror movies need to have is a protagonist as well as the villain. The villain, people will root for the villain, and there are people who absolutely root for Art the Clown and think he's the funniest guy. The physical comedy that's done in these movies, it is entertaining, but the thing with it is, so if Jason was dancing around and being goofy like Art is, it would take you out of the movie. You'd be like, that's it. They got Jason dancing around being goofy, and I can't watch this anymore. But with Art, you know how violent he is. And you know that while he's dancing around and smirking and maybe he's honking the horn, maybe he's, hey, it's Santa Claus. And he's all like in the new movie, he has a scene where he meets a guy in a Santa suit. Oh, wow, it's Santa Claus. He pointed at the wall. And he's doing it as pantomime, which is he doesn't speak. But the reason that it doesn't take me out of it with Art is because I know how violent it gets. And I know the violence happens all of a sudden. And it can be just this sudden sharp turn in the movie. This tone completely and totally changes in a moment. And the way that it's directed and written, you're never quite sure when that first moment of violence is going to be. And then the other thing with Terrifier movies is, so looking at Jason and Friday the 13th movies, you get a shot of somebody getting stabbed or punched or whatever, and that's it, right? There have definitely been times I'm watching a Friday the 13th movie with Yvonne, and we both have said, well, that wouldn't kill somebody. I mean, hurt like hell, but you wouldn't die on the spot from that. And in in the Terrifier movies, it's the opposite. It's they really should be dead by now. This is brutal. The second movie, of course, they have the infamous bedroom kill, which is all anybody talks about. In the new one, there is um, the shower scene that people are talking about. Although horror hounds that I follow have said this is a shocking one, but it may not be the best one because, of course, when you watch horror movies, you decide what the best kill is in the movie. It is such a strange genre. But what's interesting is, so the second Joker movie has flopped. It is an absolute disaster. And I think everybody saw this coming. I feel bad because Lady Gaga is a good actress. I think she actually makes a natural pick to be Harley Quinn on some level in that universe. But from what I've heard, the execution in this movie is just an absolute disaster. So Terrifier 3 wins. Terrifier 3 is number one. And what's curious too is Terrifier 3 was made on a $2 million budget. So in order to make a profit, you only have to make $4 million. The budget is basically, or to make a profit, you take the budget, you double it for advertising and various other costs, and that's how much money you have to make. So for Damien Leone to make money on these movies, they only have to make $4 million. That's nothing by Hollywood standards. And you see studios putting hundreds of millions of dollars into movies, which means for them to be a hit, they have to make between $300 and $500 million. It is insane how much money. So everybody goes to see a movie, and the reaction is, well, it was a flop because it only made 40 million in its opening weekend, and it's only projected to make 120 million dollars. What a flop! Now the studio is going to stop. And I've said for years, I still say this, movie budgets are too high. And considering people don't go to the theater like they used to, considering that people consume media in different ways, movie budgets have to come down. And when I look at some of the special effects in these $200 million movies, and I compare it to movies from 20 years ago that cost maybe 50 million, my question becomes, where's all this money going? Because when I'm watching a modern day big budget movie and I'm like, that looks fake, that's a problem. And in this movie, this horror movie that just won the box office, apparently it's pretty grim and it's pretty real. And they got pro VFX artists in on this one, and apparently the artistry of the violence is something to behold in this one. So Terrifier 4 is already in production, or at least it's in pre-production. I don't think he's making it yet, but Lauren Lavera, who plays Sienna, is now a... I've heard Scream Queen. Scream Queen's the wrong phrase for me. To me, the Scream Queens are like Linnea Quigley back in the day. It is your victim in the movies that, yep, at some point in time she's going to be screaming, and then that's it, she's done. To me, there's a difference between the Scream Queen and the Final Girl. The Final Girl would be like Nancy in Friday the 13th, or Nancy, I should say, in Elm Street. Chris in Friday the 13th Part 3, still, to this point, I think the best Friday the 13th hero ever because of that amazing monologue that just doesn't go anywhere and they never revisit it. Just for that alone. But you've got to have both. And Terrifier 3 has that protagonist people are going to root for. And they do their best to make sure you don't root for art. They do their absolute darndest to make sure that the viewer isn't rooting for art. There will be viewers rooting for art. That's how that works. But yeah, I'm excited about what this movie means. Not because, like, I'm not going to be able to see Terrifier 3 in the theater. Obviously, my wife's not going to go. I can't take any of the kids. I don't have any friends that want to go and see Terrifier 3. And it's not playing locally either. So I'm going to have to wait until it comes out on demand, on streaming, or on DVD. And full disclosure, I bought Terrifier 2, not necessarily because I plan to sit and watch it a bunch, but because I want to support horror movies. I want to see horror movies come back. I want to see somebody go, hey, this movie just made $50 million. Why don't, because, in the end, Terrifier 3 is probably going to make about 50 million bucks, right? There'll be positive word of mouth and all that. So it's not like its box office is going to drop way off. So why not bring back a Friday the 13th? Get all the litigation done you need to get to make a movie. Bring back Nightmare on Elm Street. Do something. Now, I know that there's the Camp Crystal Lake series that's upcoming, but I'd like to see a return of the horror icons. I know Scream movies come out. I'm not all that interested in Scream movies anymore. I got tired of the whodunit part, and they all have the same mask, and it's like, a lot of it feels very, very similar, and like it's the same movie. But we have new Evil Dead movies coming out, and I'm just really excited. And what this also means is that if you're not a fan of the big studios, this is a win. This is an unrated, so it never went through the Motion Pictures of Association and all the ratings processes, and it wasn't made by a big studio, and yet it's number one. So this is a win for independent theater and independent cinema beyond just the horror genre. So I'm excited. I think this is big. I think that the big studios are relying way too much on sequels. I know the irony since it's part 3 of this series too, but I think they rely too much on known IPs and just recycling the same thing over and over and over again. I'd like to see something different. So another thing that hopefully we see at some point is a new horror icon. Some like Art the Clown now is up there with Jason and Freddy and all them. So more. We want more of this. Um, Instead of putting $250 million into some kind of overproduced junk, spend 15 to $20 million, make a really good horror movie, and make $100 million on it. So when it has that $25 million opening weekend, you're not going, "Oh, we lost all our money." You're looking at that going, "Wow, that movie only cost 15 million. Next weekend, we're in the black." I don't understand what they're thinking with the budgets on movies, and maybe if enough independent movies come through and do really really well, they'll start to change that. So I also want to see The Substance, which is supposed to be a really good horror movie as well. Demi Moore looks fantastic in that, and honestly, good on her for taking a role like that. And I'm excited about horror right now. Smile 2 looks absolutely terrifying. I've not watched the original Smile yet though, but yeah, Smile 2 looks absolutely terrifying. Watching that trailer, I was like, wow, that looks intense. I might have to see that one. But anyways, there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. What do you think of Art the Clown and the Terrifier series? How do you feel about it being #1 in the theaters this weekend? Again, I'm kind of excited by that. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And yeah, I admit I'm a horror hound. When I was a kid, it was always a mess. Always a matter of just seeing what I could put up with. And okay, I'm gonna see how scared I get and can I make it through this movie. And when I did, I started watching more and more of them. And yeah, almost all the cinema nasties from the 80s I've watched, and almost all of them, nothing compared to what these movies do that are now dominating the box office. So there are some directors who made movies in the 80s that got chopped up by the Motion Picture Association of America just so they could release them in theaters, that are probably pumping their fists a bit right now and saying, "Good on you," and go for it. And we'll see what happens next. But let me know your thoughts. Do you think that we're going to see more and more independent movies that are doing well? Or is this just that one franchise that'll do well and studios will continue to ignore the reality of the ballooning budgets and it just not being worth it? Let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe in the event you've not done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.